Chapter 91. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I'll kill her. I will definitely kill her. Though I had no hope of ever surviving, if I were to escape this situation, I thought to myself, no matter what, I will kill this woman. To be honest, these goblins should be sacrificial pawns, ones who no one should have cared about, even if they die. But my heart was aching. It wasn't because they had died for me. There was the sense of incongruity from the clan members lost in the past countless battles, but from this recent matter, I just realized. I thought of them as my family. After realizing this, an immense desire for vengeance soared inside me. So monsters have this. Swinging her sword into the sky, she was slowly approaching this way. Knowing what she roughly meant, it was clear that she was completely a depraved individual. You bitch, I will definitely kill you. Ha! You know how to speak my language. Is that why? No, you're a bit different. Despite being really surprised, funny enough, she didn't really care. Perhaps whether I can speak or not was not really important in her eyes. I will definitely kill you. It'd be nice if you had a chance to. The woman who finished speaking suddenly extended her sword out into the empty air. No, rather than stretching, she was blocking an attack. Whoa-ah-wah-yeah-yeah. Simultaneously, I heard a roar. Bang! Gark soon appeared in that instant. Stupid bastard, subconsciously, I screamed. Soon, from the forest, Hark appeared, put me on his back, and began to flee. How dare! These guys also returned directly here to rescue me. They will die a useless death as well. If you think my words are not like words, I muttered with my powerless voice, but Hark soon replied immediately. I am not Hark. I am the new Hark. From that ridiculous reply, I couldn't help but laugh in the end. I knew that Gark was in an unfavorable situation fighting against her, but after failing his first attack, he immediately hid his body. At this time, I begun to worry about the other clansmen. The others, they are returning to the village. Only the new Hark and Gark returned. Captain cannot just die yet. Probably MEV was leading the tribe back to the village. Gark and Hark turned their backs to save me during the midst of all this. Whoa-ah-wah-ah-wah-wea. It was not a shout, but a scream. Looking back on top of Hark's back, I saw one of Gark's arms rolling along the ground. Fortunately, I did not see him as he quickly activated his unique ability, but that woman amusingly walked over to grab Gark's arm as she looked over to me. Shit, they were the ones who would lead the clan in the future. They must never die here. That woman instantly began to leap this way, and Hark seeing this immediately flung me into the air. Then, I felt Gark grabbing me out of nowhere. The role of new Hark was all about making time. Without much resistance, his head flew off in an instant. Though his form scattered into the wind, that damage would definitely return back to the original. The captain cannot die. You must lead the clan. The guys said basically what I wanted to say to them, though he was running as quickly as possible, but it would only be a matter of time before they were caught. As expected, the woman began to run this way. It was then. Girik. Girik. The sound of a goblin was heard. It was not from our clan. But it was a voice that I had heard countless times. It was voice that was so welcoming. Tch, your condition is not very good. Girik. Green Goblin, 3 years have not passed yet. Blood Dagger. Once I had lost contact with my goblins for a couple of days, I came here just in case, but it seems this was the case. Due to losing contact with the goblins who had watched over us, he had eventually came in search of me. While we were inside the cave, it seems that the goblins were looking for us. With the appearance of Green Goblin, the woman hesitated in shortening the distance between us. Even a twisted woman like her knew how to sense danger properly. The Green Goblin was also a superior elite. No wonder she was on her toes. Interestingly enough, I still had her sword. Green Goblin lightly struck my powerless feet with his feet as he came forth. I did not think this situation would reach these dire heights. Despite her hesitation, the Green Goblin began to rush after her with a Giric. Gark, seeing that, began to run once more. The flashbangs of Green Goblin began to ignite, as the scraping sound echoed through the air, causing me to bite my lips and turn away. Green Goblin will definitely not lose. Though I dare not judge the outcome, but they were equals. It could be seen that Green Goblin was a bit stronger. Holding on to my fading consciousness, I pleaded silently in the hopes that Green Goblin will not kill that woman. Just like that, my vision became darker. The first thing I saw as soon as I opened my eyes was a familiar tent. Looking around my body, I was surrounded in cloth bandages. I did not realize at the time, but my wounds were quite severe. I wanted to move, but I felt pain immediately surge through my body. Once I woke up, those painful memories that I did not want to remember began to emerge in my head. The images of the 2 goblin assassins' sacrifices for me, and of the goblin who draws maps who wasn't able to become honorable yet asked me to say sorry to his daughter. Fuck, subconsciously, I began to swear. It was then that I began to hear voices from outside. Did you wake up? Chief. They were the voices of Regia and Hackhagen. Of course, wondering how much time had passed and what had happened in the meantime, I asked them to come in. Come in. They immediately entered. Becoming wary of me, they began to walk towards the interior of the room. The only shaman of the tribe, Hackhagen, rushed over and began to pour healing magic into my body, but despite that, I did not feel that I was recovering any better. This was how severe the wounds were. Regia was looking at me with an extremely worried face. Unlike the previous time where she had seen me in the cave, she was extremely worried as her eyes were swollen red. It seems that she was very relieved to see me sitting up. How long has it been since I have collapsed? You were asleep for about 3 days. It has been just over a day since we have arrived at Black Spear's village. What I was most curious about were the conditions of Gark and Hark. Gark had one of his arms cut off, while Hark probably suffered from the shocking backlash of having his clone's head chopped off. Despite that, the fact in which they carried me while fleeing in those conditions, I couldn't even begin to imagine it. Gark and Hark they are still unconscious. Though I have roughly finished their treatment, concluding his report, it seemed that their lives were still in danger. At this time, all I could wish for was for them to live. Then, I looked at Hackhagen and Regia. Tell me everything that has happened before we had returned to the village. Hearing my words, Hackhagen looked at Regia before speaking first. I will tell you in her stead. After receiving the command of Chief Nim, we immediately headed towards the village. Though the plant and humans struggled incessantly, Gark's unit immediately took them under their wing and ran. When we did not see Chief Nim for a bit, the Prime Executive told us that she would go in search of Chief Nim, but hearing that, Gark and Hark stepped forward instead. It was a simple summary, but I was able to understand what roughly happened. So she did not stop them, yes. That is so. Now I know why MEV was not here. It was a serious crime and sin to disobey the words of the clan's chief. Gark and Hark, and even MEV had blatantly rejected my orders. There are 3 dead goblins. No, before that, where is Green Goblin? After Chief Nim had arrived, a half a day later, Green Goblin had returned. He reported that the human he was fighting had fled in the middle of the fight, and afterwards, he called and ordered his assassins individually collect the bodies of the fallen goblins. I began to recollect their stupid faces. Tell me their names. From my words, Hackhagen and Regia were both shocked. Usually, greenskins thought of names as being quite important. Just like how it was an honor to reveal one's name to the Grand Patriarch, it was the same in a clan of a smaller society. The goblin with skilled craftsmanship was named Nijin, and the other 2 goblin assassins' names were Kurajan and Jayan. My heart began to ache since I didn't even know their names until now. I began to recollect the situation once more. If I had researched about this more carefully, I would have not been trapped inside the cave, nor would those guys have died. Ultimately, if I was more stronger, then I could have been able to cope with these accidents. I'm still lacking. Both the clan and I are still lacking. While I was lost in thought, I noticed that Regia was needing to say something. Hackagin as well. I guessed I knew what they were probably wanting to say. It was obviously regarding the treatment of the green skins who did not follow orders. I also was thinking about that as well. They had definitely saved me, but there was a big problem arising from them not obeying my orders. This is the first time that happened within the clan. If you do not set certain precedents strictly, the clan will definitely lose its way. That was how Regia's tribe was, and with how intelligent Hackagin is, he was also worried about this matter. If the patriarch loses his dignity, then the tribe will definitely collapse. Where are they? Gark and Hark's treatment was priority, so I have stabilized their bodies as they are currently in the Prime Executive's tent. I wish to be alone for a bit. Yes. I understand. I'm glad you're safe. After indicating that I wanted to be alone, Regia and Hackagin both bowed before leaving while I was lost in my careful thoughts. To be honest, I was reaching my limits due to all of these sudden events. What I thought first of were the ones who have lost their lives for me. I started to mutter their names once more. Najin, Kurajin, Jayan. The treatment of these subordinates who disobeyed my commands was under question. After summarizing my thoughts, I rose up from my seat and told the goblins outside to gather the clan. It was time to conclude the finishing touches of this expedition. TL afterward. Calvis. Rip Najin, Kurajin, Jayan. TL note. Finally, all of the past chapters have been uploaded. Also, I will change the name of Lesser Demon that was posted in the early chapters to Lesser Asmodean. They both refer to the same race, but I feel that Asmodean sounds much cooler, so hehe. PR afterward. Psi 101. Mad respects to Najin, Kurajin, Jayan. Man. I thought the whole clan was gonna turn up become meat grinders for that Spidey woman. Green Goblin saves the day. Translator. Calvi's editors. Psi 101 Borderline Masochist. Chapter 92. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When we went outside, everyone's faces were visible. The goblins who were guarding the entrance of my tent had certainly conveyed my will to everyone. The goblins, orcs, MEV, Heian and the other executives all stood before me. All of their expressions were a mixture of expectation, concern and anxiety, which was natural with how Hark along with Gark returned back in a semi-corpse state, who could be stated to be the pillars of the clan. Feeling a gaze from a distance, I looked over to see who it was and saw a heartbreaking scene. When I was about to tell the guys in front to clear a path, it was then. They slowly began to make way like sheep. It was not a path for me. Shifting my view, I saw Gark who had lost one arm coming forward, a face so pale. Despite knowing that he should rest, he had somehow heard of the gathering and came out on his own will. With their personalities and mentality, I had suspected that they would come out, but I didn't imagine they would actually do so. Not able to see Hark, I surmised that he was in a more dire state. Seeing him drag his wounded body towards the front irritated me more than anything else. It wasn't to purport that I hated him, but rather the opposite. The surrounding goblins and orcs were looking at Gark with a vague look. His achievements were real, but it was also a felony to ignore the commands of the chief. There were guys who sent him looks of admiration, while there were others that sent him looks of contempt. Gark fell to his knees in the eyes of all the clansmen. The sin against disobeying your commands is death. His large voice echoed through the village. There was no way I could kill him. These guys had saved my life. But, discipline was important. Punishment was inevitable. After biting my lips tightly once, I spoke. I think you know your sins, Gark. You probably also know why, I have asked the clan to gather. Gark looked at me with burning eyes speechlessly. He had determined that this loyal orc will choose to die in my hands. He did not make any excuses, not even the fact that he had done this to save my life. He had dragged his exhausted body over and waited for his throat to be cut. It is a great sin to betray the chief's command. The clansmen began to nod. But all of this happened because of the shortcomings of a chief. This is not a place where Gark will die. The offense in disobeying the command will be replaced by the arm that you have lost. Once your wound has recovered, you will immediately fast for 50 days, and shall not eat. That is also the same for Hark. Of course, it was a foolish choice to execute them here. They may not be smart, but they were one of the pillars dedicated to this clan. I had no thought of listening to their wants whatsoever. Also, I will strip away the names of Hark and Gark. Gark will be called Half-Blade and Hark Mirror Blade. It will be a long time before you retrieve your lost honor and names. For a while, the orcs and goblins were busily chattering amongst one another. There were many astonished reactions to the cruelty in stripping one's name, but Gark nodded immediately. It meant that he was willing to acknowledge his sin, and will pay for them. I will surely repay for this irreparable sin. Then, he slammed his head onto the ground. For blood dagger. Instead, I clenched my teeth tightly, preventing me from responding to his declaration. It was hard to see his face any longer, so I gestured lightly. Then, with his paled face, Half-Blade disappeared shortly with the support of the 3 goblin sisters. I have passed judgment on Hark and Gark. What remains is the treatment of MEV and the dead goblins. I started to look over at MEV slowly. It was uncomfortable to see her shivering, but a mistake is a mistake. MEV as the prime executive should have stopped Gark and Hark while safely returning to the village. Though I was thankful for her consideration of me, but that was different. It is not only Gark and Hark that have sinned. MEV, as the prime executive, should have prevented them, and insisted on returning to the village. Not stopping them is clearly a sin on your part. MEV carefully nodded her head. I had slowly thought about her. She was definitely competent, one who was doing well in leading the female clansmen. But she was too soft. If I were to leave today's mistake be, she will truly bring a true poison to the clan one day. After biting my lip tightly, I declared my final verdict. MEV will fast for 50 days along with the other 2, and shall not eat food. In addition, your title as prime executive will also be stripped away. I will follow your command. As expected, she accepted the punishment silently. She didn't have an expression of bitterness, but rather a sign of relief that I'd still returned alive. Of course, I was thankful towards her. Ignoring her words, I continued. A new prime executive will need to be appointed. I had already thought about who would be best suitable in taking the position of prime executive. Although the 3 goblin sisters have long been devoted, but they are also clearly lacking. They have depended on MEV too much over the years, and since they were hard to control, it was best to keep them in their current positions. As for Heian, she might be even more serious than MEV. She sticks onto me wholeheartedly, totally infatuated. If it was Heian and not MEV that was in charge, she would definitely have led all of the troops to save me, so she was exempted. Hakugen was already buried in a lot of heavy administration work. I felt that he was competent enough to embrace the female clansmen, but the notion of increasing his burden outweighed the positives. Then the remaining candidate was one. It was a person who knew how to distinguish a suitable distance. The position of the new prime executive will be given to Regia. My voice echoed, and she soon nodded. I will follow your command. She nodded and showed her respect. Just like how she had done well so far, I thought that she would continue to fare well. Regia was intelligent, one that could distinguish what was right and what was wrong. She was much more suitable for this kind of position, unlike MEV, who was much more susceptible to her feelings. But it didn't wipe away the risk factor. Though she was obedient and did not reveal that side of hers in the past, but just in case she had other thoughts, I spoke to her. Remember that day well. How could I possibly forget? After my speech, everyone nodded, and unlike Hark and Gark, I decided to punish MEV immediately. Realizing my intention, she moved away as well. Soon, MEV disappeared from my sight and the atmosphere was slowly settling down to some extent. Though I wasn't satisfied from a personal standpoint, the rest of the clan members were in consent. In Gark and Hark's case, there was some complaints, but in comparison, it felt that MEV's punishment tethered on the side of being a tad bit weak. The remaining ones were Kurajan, Jayan, and Nejin. I reflexively turned to look for that one goblin. It was the mother holding a baby goblin, who was staring over here. There was no mistake that she was the widow, the mother of Nicole. Though I have not fully understood the concept of family life within Green Skins, it was no different that a father and mother here are responsible for their children. From the widowed mother goblin's point of view, she lost her husband, and in the perspective of Nicole, she had lost her father. Nejin, Jayan, Kurajan. When I called their names with a pensive sadness, I could feel everyone flinched a bit, especially the widowed goblin whose complexion was becoming slightly pale. They truly loved and cherished one another. Just the reaction of how they looked at me was enough to speak on that. It was important for the mother and her child to live on in her husband's honor. I spoke their names once more. Nejin, Jayan, Kurajan. These are goblins who also disobeyed my orders, and died without honor. They are already dead. Their honor now sullied the ground, but I have no intention of picking it up. That is how important it is to listen to my words as chief of Blood Dagger clan. Everyone nodded, including Regia and Hakajan. The commands of the chief was definitely important, as no one did not know of this truth. The widowed mother goblin was also hugging Nicole tightly as she was looking over this way. There was no grudge in her eyes as she also accepted this fate. Looking at the widowed mother goblin's eyes, I bit my lip. But I will remember their names, was what I was about to say, but my voice did not come out well. This was enough. In truth, only I had to know that they had died more honorably than ever. But it was natural that I did not feel so well. In the end, I continued to mutter their names. Looking straight into the eyes of the widowed mother goblin, I muttered their names clearly so that everyone can hear my voice. Nejin, Jayan, Kurajan. Since they were quick-witted, they would know why I was muttering their names. I wanted them to engrave these into their hearts. The widowed mother goblin was looking at me initially with a pale complexion, but after I continued to mutter their names, her expression began to change. Within moments, her eyes reddened as she was trying to hold in her tears. She was biting her molar tightly. The message has been sent. There were no need for words. My will was delivered. Her expression was not one of disdain for her beloved, nor the expression of one who had lost her pride due to her husband, but one of dignity. The belief that he had died honorably despite not being honored. The pride of having a child of that man in her embrace. The glory that her beloved husband had saved Blood Dagger's life and died. Eventually, tears began falling down from the widowed mother goblin's face as I closed my eyes. Prime Executive Regia will guide the clansmen and organize the funerals. I understand. While I was trying to re-enter my tent, their voices began to proclaim. For Blood Dagger. Normally, I would brush it off casually. But today, those voices weighed very heavy to my ears. TL afterward. Calvies. Sad day for the Blood Dagger clan. I wish I could go and hug that mother goblin. TL notice. Long day and finished my midterm. Woot. Also, after discussing, I've decided that Demon would be better than Asmodean for less ambiguity and have edited all the past chapters accordingly. Thanks for the comments. PS bonus chapter for the weekend and will be taking Sunday off. See you on Monday PR afterward. Psy 101. Damn it man, you're the chief. You better carve their names on your body or something man. Words are meaningless. Translator. Calvi's editors. Psy 101 borderline masochist. Chapter 93. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Stronger. So far the main reason for growing stronger has always been revenge. It was still the same now. With a second life, the goals in my life were meeting Choi Solji and exacting retribution on the Sword Saint to some extent, but my perception of this gradually began changing after rebirth, growing up with a brood of green skins and then finally leading this clan. They were equally precious. In this situation, the first thing I must do is become stronger, exacting revenge on that woman. Though the majority of the Spider clan would lose their lives due to the Queen of the North, it meant that she'll become stronger than all of them. I wasn't sure, but if she could accomplish it, then so can I. I stared at the weapon which I stole from that woman. Cursed voice. It is a weapon too vague to be called a weapon or a dagger. It is a weapon made by a siren who initially lived in the depths of the sea. She forged it with her own scales in favor of a loved one from a race of humans. Whenever her sword is used to attack, a clear, clean sound as beautiful as Siren's voice. But after time passed and the human used this sword to kill sirens, a bad, fuzzy sound had begun to emanate. There is a passive effect that reduces the enemy's abilities when exposed to this sound. Dexterity +3, mana +2, fortunate. It wasn't just simply good. It was where one considers it to be of the highest grade. I observed my body was becoming heavy, perceived it was due to her unique ability, but now realized that it was a debuff effect from this weapon. I began to slowly recollect the image of that woman in my head. Revenge, that twisted, short-haired woman. Before she falls under the hand of the Queen of the North, I will make her die painfully before me. I bit my lip. I had to become stronger than ever before as I am still a weakling on this continent. This time, I was fortunate to survive, luckily with the help of Green Goblin. But there is still about 1 year left until clan independence. If I continue to remain in this state, it is impossible to protect my tribe. If my strength was equal to that of Black Spear, or just below Green Goblin, she wouldn't have been able to approach me so boldly and recklessly like then. Not only would I have been able to return alive, but I could have also safeguarded my clansmen as well. During this 1 year, I needed to be strong enough to be at least, on the level of Black Spear to protect both my body and clan. As such, time had slowly passed. For instance, fortunately I had succeeded in returning Ahian safely to the city. Thanks to the fierce encounter between Green Goblin and the Spider, a few survivors were luckily able to escape the place. Since the rescue squad dispatched from Legius were all killed by the Spider, it was apparently a miracle that they had returned alive. I made Ahian re-enter the cave from the entrance we dug and made her pretend to be safely rescued as she crawled out. Ahian did not want to return after seeing my wounds, but it was an inevitable choice. It was more advantageous to have her collect and synthesize the information with the humans, before sending them to me. Since I did not have much information regarding the Spider clan in the past, I needed information only Ahian could bring. After a few days, I had received some useful information. Beov, Savior.nim, speak. Yes, though all I heard were rumors from the outside, but I have roughly discovered her identity. The woman's name is Park Hyeri, and I was told that she was originally active in the East. I am still investigating why she is here in the West, but the most important conclusion I could make is that her behavior pattern is simply due to fickleness. I see, since she was the one I did not remember in my memories, it meant that more sensitive, private information in relation to the Spider clan was hard to obtain, no less for a third-rate swordsman like me in the past. If there were people that knew, they would definitely be famous, 1 or 2 famous elites at the most. Is there anything else? Yes. I don't know if this is helpful information, but she is 22 years old. It has been 6 years since she has come to this continent, and exactly 3 years after since she killed all of her clan members before fleeing the city. I did not find out exactly what has gone on before that, but it now seems she has joined the Spider Clan roughly about a year ago. I am also investigating her unique ability, and I will need a bit more time to make inquiries about her. I have also heard that the city will start hunting for her personally, once a bit more information has been gathered. Well done. No, surely not. Savior.nim, PL, please recover your body well. As if she had suffered quite a shock from my injured self, she would occasionally send this remark. After disconnecting, I began to walk. My body wasn't in a state to train right away, so I was concentrating on restoring my body, which the others were doing likewise. Anyways, it was the 20th day since MEV had started fasting, and 10 days since Hark and Gark had started fasting. I decided to find them and see how they were holding up. Raising my body, I was relieved my body was progressing well with recovery, all thanks to Hakugen. I gestured to the goblins who were about to follow me as I looked within the wooden prisons. Of course, this was easily breakable for Gark and Hark to escape from, but they wouldn't make such foolish choices. They did not take any food that I had sneakily given to them, which showed just how strong their wills were. Gark and Hark were sitting still in their positions firmly, while MEV sat in the other prison in a depressed state. Is it bearable? Yes. But, this is the punishment Blood Dagger has decreed. We must become even more despaired. We are grateful to Blood Dagger for his mercy. Despite the extreme punishment of stripping their names, it was funny seeing how they could smile despite not being able to eat food for so long. Though it was strange, Gark refused to reattach his arm. Days later, our clan had investigated, and found Gark's arm. It was then cured with magic, but he refused to reattach his arm. It was a resolute way of symbolizing how it took the place of his sin, as Gark was sincerely trying to live with only one arm. Fortunately, Hark did not have any side effects or malfunctions in his body. But he smiled bitterly seeing his brother without his arm. Though they were awkward with one another, they certainly were family. There were even reports that the 3 goblin sisters had visited their brothers. I didn't know if they had come to throw rocks or console them, but it was a very interesting scene to imagine. I turned my head away and looked at MEV. I honestly felt a bit sad, as her hair was a mess, and her eyes swollen. Those bent wings showed just how discouraged and depressed she was. MEV. CA, Captain, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Captain. As soon as I opened my mouth, she replied to me instantly. I'm not trying to blame you, MEV. Boo, but your actions were clearly wrong. We were lucky this time to have this result, but I cannot guarantee that we can be this lucky the next time we encounter this kind of situation again. That was why I recalled the position of Prime Executive from you. I know, I'm sorry, Captain. It's not because of the seat of Prime Executive, I knew what she was worried about. It's not like I do not trust you. Rather, thank you. From my words, MEV began to cry once more. Even though it was like this, it seemed that she endured a lot of heartache and hardships, probably even thinking that she might become abandoned. Sniff, sniff, with the event at the Forest Earthworm Burrow to the recent event, no wonder she was in a lot of heartache. I slowly extended my arm inside the prison and stroked her hair. She embraced my touch and sobbed for a while. As such, more time had passed. MEV, Gark and Hark had been able to endure for 50 days, and immediately after they had been released from custody, they were scarily swinging their swords once they ate. It wasn't just them, as this atmosphere had been maintained for a long time. Even the lowest ranked goblins were wholly focused on training and conducting mock battles. For some, the discomfort of seeing their chief, and others suffering pain, as well in also having their comrades die, while others bore the pain of being helpless as everyone began to grow slowly. In the case of Gark, he wasn't able to flaunt his former strength due to this own arm, but he was quickly growing towards repossessing his former pace. Hark was also continuing to grow stronger as the gap with the new Hark gradually diminished. It was the same for Mivi. If her purpose was evolution before, then she was currently chasing after something in the distance that was far away from her now. Regia and Hakugen were also growing, as Hakugen began to focus wholly on recovery magic, while Regia also blindly focused on training as well. Interestingly enough, the one with the most dramatic growth was Heian. Even after that, she would still go out and train day and night. Other than her time with me, she would continually move her body and exert her mana, as she did not even sleep properly. I did not know exactly, but it was probably a tremendous shock to her returning as a semi-corpse after not being able to help me at the cave back then. "You cannot hurt yourself. I will protect you." It was the remark that I heard when I was in my tent. Though she had muttered this when she thought I was sleeping, I had heard her clearly. Engraving that voice in me, I also trained incessantly. I studied the use of my unique ability, the physical body of the Asmodean, and also researched on how I can exploit the strengths of a gladiator class to the fullest. I moved my body to the utmost, pushing the boundaries of my limits. Though my growth was not visible, but it was obvious that I was moving forward. We kept moving forward. The clan had definitely been inflicted with a large wound. But such a wound does not hurt now. New flesh grows, and with new flesh, comes a more durable and stronger one. The memory remains, but it provides us a driving force to become strong. New children were also being born as the clan was becoming larger, increasing while our wounds fade into memory. We were advancing, constantly. As such, we moved forth. TL afterward. Calvies. Dang, it'll be hard imagining Gark fight with one arm now. I hope he regrows it or gets a new arm somehow. PR afterward. Psi 101. Onward upwards. Translator. Calvies editors. Psi 101 borderline masochist. Chapter 94. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Western City AIA. It is one of the few major cities of the north, south, east and west. They possess quite a lot of dungeons, as the summoned are more active in this city, under the management of the Holy Order. Security is not bad, and with enough elites, the lower classes are able to leisurely enjoy their own lives. It may look like the city of AIA was managed by the Holy Order, but in truth, it was not. The small cities of Legius, Leia, Bartaion, and so on were all in one alliance along the western cities, as it wasn't an exaggeration to say that the Holy Order ruled over the entire West. As such, the Holy Order Guild Master, Choi Young-hoon, the city leader of AIA, woke up early in the morning, and began to organize the information brought to him from the logistic department. As he headed into his office, there was a pile of documents lying on the table. Although the continent was originally turbulent, the situation had become more serious in recent years, so he had to read each report with a lot more responsiveness and seriousness than before. North. Cold Spear, Han Sohai and the Winter Clan, selected as the leader of a small city. Despite being summoned only 3 years ago, the results she has achieved has truly been incredible. If it was the Cold Spear Han Sohai, then Choi Young-hoon definitely knew who she was. She had immediately departed for the north after building her own forces once summoned in Legius. There were rumors that she was an unbelievable genius, as he had tried his utmost to try and recruit her into the Holy Order. Of course, he was rejected without hesitation, but she was a good person. When the continent was under turmoil, these kind of individuals were a blessing to humans. Though he had failed in recruiting her, he wished that this woman would grow well. Anticipating that she would return as a strong warrior without having him pay too much attention to her, he turned over the page. Chapter 95. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Savior.nim. Choi Young-hoon is dead. Well done, my disciple. Soon, I will arrange a time for you to meet. Yes. Thank you. Savior.nim, hearing the daily news, I disconnected. The event occurred 1 year earlier than before in my past memories. I considered that it probably was the same as before. Though there was no exact details of who had killed him, but there was not simply 1 or 2 people who had grudges against the West, so it was quite difficult to predict. What is important to note is, Sword Saint would now take over the regime. In the beginning, attacking the Holy Order was a difficult task, but after seeing her rise up, I started feeling indignation. I had already decided on the day I would fight against Sword Saint. The most ideal timing was when the Queen of the North and the Sword Saint would fight directly. Until then, I had to raise my strength wholly as I walked ahead. Heading towards the wooden prisons created a couple of months ago, I saw a few members. The moment I revealed my presence, their bodies immediately trembled. Carry for blood dagger. The orc swordsman guarding the prison saluted as I peered inside. There were a total of 3 people. At first, there were 5, but 2 of them were not able to withstand the torture and died on the spot. While trying to enter, something hit me, which I realized were my horns had grown bigger. After evolving into an intermediate demon a few days ago, I still wasn't accustomed to walking around with my prolonged horns. Though my body frame was definitely smaller than that of an orc, but the body of a demon with their long horns caused quite a bit of discomfort walking around in these kind of confined areas, making me wonder at times that the body of an orc was much better. I shook my head once more before standing in front of them. Do you remember a bit now? That is, the guys I had captured were the regular members of a murderer clan called the Hound Clan. They were humans who I had coincidentally come across while trailing after Park Hyeri, of the Spider Clan. Centering around Regia's assassin squad, as the main source of information, I had utilized them, which in turn allowed me to obtain these results. Sadly Park Hyeri was not in that place, but instead I was able to find the so-called hounds. There were only 5 who were captured by the clan raid. Of course, we did not fully capture the whole Hound Clan and the Spider Clan, but it was a huge achievement just from obtaining valuable information which the 2 were closely related. Spider, where is she? We do not know. We only know that the SP, Spider is located in the east. Other than the executives, we don't. Unfortunately, the guys we had captured were on the bottom end of the spectrum. Though I had attained a lot from the torture methods, but such information proved to be quite useless overall. What I had obtained was just that the Hound Clan are now stealthy hiding and couldn't be active as of late due to being targeted in the east. As if my glance had made them nervous, they were trembling. Soon, Heian's voice echoed from behind. She understood that I had no need for these guys any longer. Without even chanting a spell, roots immediately appeared and began to plunge their ways through them. Ugh, UHP, EUB. Terrible screams escaped out as the deafening cries filled the air. No, they weren't able to scream from the start. With the roots plunging through their orifices, their bodies began to burst open as they died on the spot. Heading outside, Prime Executive Regia was waiting for me. As usual, she was waiting patiently with her head bowed. Preparations. It is finished. Good work. It was not only Regia who was waiting for me as giant wolf Abar was wagging her tail and slobbering her tongue. Funny enough, but this she-wolf had also evolved. I had never realized that a wolf species could change, but Abar's size had become a bit larger. Her canines had become larger, and her physical strength had increased immensely. If it was a normal summoned human, they wouldn't even be able to deal with her. I mounted Abar like that as she shook her body once in delight before heading towards the place where the clan had gathered. After that previous event, we had left the Black Spear village and returned back to the Green Goblin clan's encampment. Rather than adventuring outside, I had judged that it was best to raise our strengths from within. Of course, it wasn't like we stopped hunting to accumulate experience, but with the clan now becoming much more stronger and unified as a whole, we spent most of our time training with Green Goblin. I had personally grown a lot, but I was still somewhat lacking. There were many times when confronting Green Goblin I was left beaten senseless. But, I did not lose so miserably nor as quickly, unlike the first time we dueled, so it was a tolerable growth. In the most recent battle, by utilizing my unique ability, I had endured over 50 moves from him, so noticing that, at least I had crossed the bare minimum. It wasn't just me that had grown over this year. Gark and Hark continued to grow stronger. Despite not having chosen to rank up to a higher species, it seems that they were keen on staying true as orcs throughout, as they continued to evolve into higher classes while their abilities also increased. Especially, Gark, who had shown an explosive growth. He was so incredibly strong that it was hard to believe it considering he only had one arm. Though he did not hold any authority in the clan, he was second in strength within the clan. It was no wonder that I trusted him more than even Regia. All of the ones who evolved into an orc swordsman followed his command very well. Half-Blade is strong. He's a loyal orc which has overcome huge suffering. We must all follow Half-Blade. There were even those who spoke of this in such a manner. I did not know why, but the one-handed orc had induced a deep sense admiration from the orcs. The anecdote of Gark losing his arm to save Blood Dagger had spread out, becoming a legend, causing Gark to receive an explosive amount of support. Mivi had also evolved. Unfortunately, she was not able to change species either. Whether a satisfying species had not appeared or that there was none, I was not sure, but what was important was that she had selected a special class in place of having a rank up in species. Her class was now called an Elemental Archer, and though it was somewhat awkward, but she managed to succeed in contracting with the elements. With how there were a few humans who were elementalists on the continent, it was a great achievement for her to reach this class. It wasn't just simply her combat power which rose up. Though she couldn't fully control the elements of fire and wind right now, but eventually with growth, she would be able to achieve even significant results. With recent signs of resilience, I had considered that she would probably change species the next time, if given the opportunity. Anyhow, I rode on top of a bar while heading toward the area where the clansmen were. They were all waiting for me. There were orcs who were holding large and small loads of supplies filled with provisions while staring at me. For Blood Dagger ENV, the moment I arrived, Gark was the first to loudly proclaim with the flag standard on his back. Soon, the other orcs and goblins also began to yell. For Blood Dagger. I walked through the guys filled with pride and pleasure. They parted like the Red Sea did for Moses, and cleared a path for me. Green Goblin began to smile brightly at the end of the path. From here on in, I thought that it wasn't polite to ride a bar any longer, so I quickly dismounted and began to walk towards him. All of the orcs and goblins were looking towards me. The three goblin sisters, Hakajin and along with countless warriors cheered while saluting with their hands firmly placed on their chests, as I passed by. Even Green Goblin smiled, standing and welcoming me as I walked up to where he was. Soon, Green Goblin spoke. Time is fast, is it not? Girick. To be honest, I felt that it was much shorter. I still have many things to learn from Green Goblin. Well, with Blood Dagger being a green skin like this, I'm sure that you'll become a great one. I guarantee it. Girick. This time, it was my turn to give him some face. I thank you, even if they are empty words, Green Goblin. For my remark, he laughed speechlessly. It seems his thoughts were somewhat complicated. I saluted with my hand placed firmly on my chest and bowed, kneeling on one knee, but recognizing that it wasn't enough, I lowered my head even more, before his arm was able to reach my face. He bit his own finger with his sharp canines. As if he had bitten it strongly enough, blood started to trickle out, but he just smiled. Then he began to draw on my face, the symbol of the Grand Patriarch. This ritual which was bestowed towards green skins, who were eligible for independence after 3 years. As soon as Green Goblin reached out to me, there was now only complete silence in the air. Strength, wisdom and honor. Strength, wisdom and honor. Interestingly, I began to become curious of what he drew on my head. Though there were only 2 times that he had drawn on me, and yet, I still remembered Nijin. However, unlike Nijin who was skilled at drawing, as if he was uncomfortable with this kind of task, Green Goblin's hand was a bit shaky. The drawing wasn't coming out as well as he had expected, it seems. I slowly closed my eyes. Once he had finished drawing the symbol of the Grand Patriarch on my forehead, he withdrew his hand as I simultaneously opened my eyes. Well, it wasn't easy to draw because of the horns. As expected, the drawing did not come out well, but I smiled. Thank you. I thank you in many ways, Green Goblin. If I once stood at the crossroads with the same options back then, would have no doubt selected you again, Green Goblin. That is very gratifying. No, the best compliment, Blood Dagger. Strength, wisdom and honor. Strength, wisdom and honor. He did not reply to my salute. His nose touched my nose once, before he spoke to me again. My task is complete, Blood Dagger. Now you are a dignified green skin. You have passed the test of strength, wisdom and honor, and have learned patience over these 3 years. You can now set up your glorious banner anywhere on the continent. No, now you are free to leave. Even his voice was beginning to stutter. Seeing him become like this, it was quite a refreshing feeling. I replied to him with a smile. I owe you a debt of gratitude. It was then that a loud cheers began to erupt from behind me. For Green Goblin. For Blood Dagger. For Blood Dagger. For Green Goblin. It has really been 3 years. I opened my mouth to the ones who were wildly cheering. It was a cliché, but I spoke with a sincere voice. Let's go, my brothers and sisters. TL afterward. Calvies. Ah, it was such an amazing 3 years. All the memories of fooling around with Green Goblin and the recruiting of all those new members along with the intense fights were really enjoyable. Let's go find Goff. PR afterward. T0 Non. Independence at last. Oh, Chapter 95 5.4.3.2.1 before the big 100 chapters. Thanks to the hardcore readers that make this all worth it, and especially those who picks up a mistake now then. Translator. Calvi's editors. T0 Non-Borderline Masochist. Chapter 96. You are listening at novelfull.audio. We were leaving the Green Goblin clan. It wasn't that long nor short time ago that we had stayed there, but the lingering sentiments which we had here was quite considerable taking into account how long we had lived here. Even though he had not expressed it a lot, Green Goblin really liked me so much so, that he would forever leave the tent I lived in untouched as a reminder of my stay. This will probably last as long as another clan does not enter into guardianship under him. In addition to this, it also seems a Blood Dagger flag will be left raised high within their village for a while as well. It wasn't only I who appreciated the hospitality, as the other green skins also acknowledged their senior comrades by saluting with their hands on their chest. The time we had spent there was extensive, but it only took a moment before we departed from it. Feeling a presence waiting outside the village, I looked over and noticed Black Spear waiting for me. You've really worked hard all this time, brother. Thank you, Black Spear. Black Spear has already decided to accompany me. No, it was implicitly determined that we would move together as brethren clans since the outset. But are you really fine with leaving behind your village here in the west, since I can leave this village for the new green skins to manage and depart together with a new brother? It's not that regrettable. It's an answer only you would say. It was certainly a warm welcome to have Black Spear with me on this journey. But there was another problem. I swung my gaze around and began to glance towards the goblin who was awkwardly standing beside us. She was a goblin shaman who was standing with a staff larger than her body. In short, she was the female goblin who had followed Black Spear. It was the recently new green skins who had chosen Black Spear clan to be their protectors for next the 3 years. In other words, she was a newbie that had just passed the Patriarch's exam. It was a bit awkward seeing her looking around the surroundings slightly dumbfounded. It was understandable, as it has only been a few months since she had arrived at Black Spear's village, and now they were moving once again, causing her to be somewhat worried. No, rather than that, it was certain that she didn't like our clan. Black Spear, also feeling the heated gaze from Littlefinger, coughed dryly as he spoke. Humph, but will it be okay if the Littlefinger clan were to venture out together? To be honest, my line of thinking wasn't that keen to take the time, resources, and be responsible for such baggage, so I felt uncomfortable, but I couldn't help it. Littlefinger looked at me from Black Spear's words, conscious of my presence. Of course they are welcomed. Littlefinger's face began to brighten as she soon rushed off to her own unblooded clan members, which consisted of about 30, to relay the joyful news. Spotting them clustered up like that, I began to subconsciously think of my past. It wouldn't be bad to have such cute little guys with us. Our group had decided to travel off to the east. Of course, the east, north, or south were all fine choices, but in the present situation, it was the only option. Our priority was to become stronger, but also to exact vengeance. If I remember correctly, there was not much left before a small city in the east becomes completely destroyed. The small city of Samora. It was a slaver's city which administered both human and green-skinned slaves. To be precise, they weren't simply titled as a slave city. It was the city that had all sorts of human garbage converging around it, a town for corrupt human beings to release their greed and desires. To say it once more, it was a city of people no different from murderers. The city was managed by the Blackthorn Guild, and the guild master was Yoon Young-soo. I could not say that their forces was strong, but I remembered that they were people of sufficient ability. Due to the alliances, treaties with various clans and guilds, their size and scale was also quite large. From before, I was not aware of the information properly, but now I was able to access quite a lot of information. The Spider and Hound clans. Both had their hideouts located in the east. It was a simple guess, but I felt that there might be a relationship between the city and the two murderer clans. Yoon Young-soo may not be classified as a criminal, but he's definitely trash, and those who managed Samora with him were also likewise. If my assumption is correct, then the current situation in the east would be abnormal. Of course it might not be as well. Nevertheless, it was a must for our clan to head east. Personal effort is important, but it was also vital to gain benefits from the system. In other words, the city of Samora, which will disappear in the near future, was a large chunk of experience lying around. If things work out as predicted, we'll be able to catch 1 or 2 rabbits. Mounted on top of Ibar, we slowly traversed through the western forest as Black Spear spoke to me once more. East, it's been a while. Do you know of it? Of course. Before, I used to be under Storm Shadow, so it's been about 5 years. Is that so? One of the goblin shamans who had undergone the warrior exam with me had gone under Storm Shadow. The elder shaman of the Dark Moon clan. He could also have departed for another place, since the 3-year grace period had ended, but I thought it would be nice to greet him if we were to meet. But, seeing that even Black Spear was under Storm Shadow, I thought that he was quite an admirable guy. What kind of troll is Storm Shadow, Black Spear? You could say he is someone who represents the whole of the East like Green Goblin. Due to the order of the Grand Patriarch, he also oversees the warrior exam as well. Though he is a bit quiet and silent, he is an impressive green skin. I see. We should be able to meet soon. Since he had settled in the east, it wouldn't be a bad choice to reside at Storm Shadow's village until we find a permanent residence to set up, if you would choose to Blood Dagger. I thought it was a great idea, especially if it was Storm Shadow, the one who relayed to me through Dark Moon to come to them and had led us to the Land of Glory. But I had heard that the forests in the east are mostly swamps. Are there even places for us to set up camp? There should be a few left, Blood Dagger. In fact, since the terrain is not so nice to live in excluding trolls, there should only be a few tribes and clans that have settled. Since there should be a lot of empty villages that other clans had used and abandoned, we should be able to find a place to stay soon. It seemed that even the monsters did not like the swamp very much. However, the beasts that come from the swamps are of good quality. Their leather was firmer, allowing us to make more durable bags, and their claws and poison were also usable, though quite tricky to deal with. Regia, who knows well about poison, will probably supply the village of what it needs. As such, we walked on. While we were walking together, Black Spear, as if he had a lot to teach, was engaged in a long conversation with Littlefinger as he passionately explained this place and that, while Gark and Hark were marching with our flag held high as usual. Mev, Heian, and the three goblin sisters were engaged in a normal conversation, Hakugen and Regia likewise in another. The march was much more comfortable than I had thought. Though the western forest was quite rough, but since we had visited these places often, we were fairly accustomed to this. When the entire group was exhausted, we would set up camp and enjoy a short rest while eating some rations. We had plenty of drinking water and food, however, we did not forget to hunt for beasts. Once we had walked for quite a long time, we were finally able to depart from the western forest entirely and begin advancing through the jungle. In order to traverse from west to east, you had to cross the jungle. Though humans use it from time to time, there was no reason for green skins to necessarily head out and encounter them intentionally. Anyhow, I was very excited about entering the jungle since there was another brother aside from Black Spear named Goff who resided there. If he had not left yet, we would be able to finally meet. There might be a possibility that he would be waiting for me since we had promised to build our flag together. The clansmen, understanding how I felt, began to advance through the jungle a bit quicker and soon we were able to arrive at the village where the ogres lived in. The village was quite large, as all the tents, fences and even the tools they used were large in size. Felling our presences, soon large ogres began to come out from the village. Among them, the largest one came out to meet us. Strength, wisdom and honor. Koreak. Strength, wisdom and honor, it is a face I have seen before. Black Spear of the West, and you, must be Blood Dagger. He is called Big Ogre, a chief of the Big Ogre clan within the jungle. Unlike the rumored arrogant and intimidating presence that he had quite an innocent, warm smile. I had thought that he would not recognize me from my change of appearance, but it seems that he had roughly recognized who I was from our flag standards. Thinking about it, it has already been 3 years. Are you trying to settle in the jungle? His look was full of anticipation as his heart pounded eagerly for my answer. It was a moment where I felt greatly apologetic for betraying his expectations. I'm sorry, Big Ogre. We are currently heading east. From my words, he was immediately disappointed. That's quite a shame. It would be better to live in the jungle than the east, can't you reconsider once more? His look was of anticipation once more, making me feel that this guy had been quite lonely just like Green Goblin. We have something to do in the east. If we were to finish our mission and an opportunity were to arise, we will visit here once more. Great. The jungle is a good place to live. It is definitely a place that Blood Dagger and Black Spear would be satisfied with. How about sleeping here for one night before going? The face of the guy in front was like one that had separation anxiety disorder. I felt a bit bad to refuse in this situation, but knowing that I couldn't afford to lose any more time, I started with asking him the question I was most curious about. Is Goff clan still around here? Interestingly, his face distorted from my question. No, to be precise, his eyes reddened the moment I brought it up. Carrie-eek. That ogre who doesn't even know grace. I don't know such an ogre. But his eyes were implying that he knew about Goff. Worried that Goff might have betrayed Big Ogre, I asked once more. It has been 3 years since I had looked after him, but he left immediately without a single farewell. How could I forgive him? Correct. He's a very bad guy. Even after Big Ogre finished talking, the ogres in the back suddenly changed appearances into their rumored berserker selves. For a while, Black Spear and I stared at him dumbfoundedly. Soon realizing what condition he was in, he settled himself down and spoke once more. It was a pleasant, yet also lamentable statement. Cume, go, if it's Goff, he went to the west. I heard that he went to find his brother, TL afterward. Calvies. No, they missed each other. When will the reunion finally happen? PR afterward. T0 non. And so the journey begins. Translator. Calvies editors. T0 non borderline masochist. Chapter 97. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The brother that Goff had spoken of was obviously me. Unless he had created a new brother that had traveled to the west, it was definitely me that he journeyed in search of. So it seems that we had crossed paths, just like what Mivi had mentioned before. Since the forests were so expansive and the roads very diverse, it appears that we had crossed paths without knowing. Though we weren't in any dire situation, it was best to quickly move forward, so I had no choice but to converse with the fretful ogre in front of them. If Goff were to visit here once more, please tell him to come towards the east. Cume, I understand. It seems that he had sensed that we would depart immediately without staying here for a day. He replied as his shoulders drooped in disappointment. Boo, but are you really not staying before going? It is unfortunate that we cannot prolong our visit with the Big Ogre clan. But a meal might be all we can ask for at this point, that's it. Prepare a banquet for the guests right now. Whoa. Prepare the banquet. In a flash, the ogres suddenly scrambled around as they furiously prepped the banquet. Black Spear and Regia, not knowing the characteristics of ogres from the jungle, showed a stupefied face from such a scene. As such, we were treated very kindly to all kinds of delicious food and meat of beasts, and even to the alcohol they had made themselves. Due to their large frames, they could display how much of the threshold they could tolerate themselves, causing me smile thinking how Goff might have changed into this as well. Coo, he's truly a bad ogre, isn't he? He could not leave like this. I was so good to him. It is a bit much to leave without saying goodbye. The atmosphere was good, but the problem was that Big Ogre was starting to become miserable, and most of the content he spoke of was Goff the majority of the time. As a result, it was painstakingly difficult for me to listen to him. It was welcoming to listen to stories of how Goff had lived here, but the problem was that Big Ogre was also whining a lot. Thus, even Black Spear and I began to grow weary of his brooding. With only the chiefs drinking alcohol with one another, even Littlefinger looked around as if she wanted to escape from this disturbing atmosphere. Girick. Ungrateful ogre Girick. Sometimes, that's all he mumbled. There were the odd occasions when he would suddenly scream, causing us to tremble from the sudden outburst momentarily. But, who is this little goblin lady? She is the new breed who's recently entered the continent. It was decided that I would be in charge of her for the next 3 years. Right. It seems that it is also time for Black Spear to be, but don't pour out your soul into the new green skins. It just takes an instant to be betrayed. Blood Dagger. It's not long before it's your turn, so engrave my words. You must never open your heart. To be honest, the more I listened to him, I felt that Goff did not do anything wrong, but despite that, he was still adhering to this attitude. What was certain was that there were useful information that was being filtered through this banquet. For instance, there were a growing number of humans heading to the east these days. As a result, time passed quickly, and eventually it became a dark night. I looked around and saw the 3 goblin sisters playing on the backs and heads of the ogres while Gark and Hark were exchanging drinks with an ogre. The ogre village was more entertaining than I had presumed originally, and seeing how the other clans were also enjoying a pleasant time, it eventually became an ambiguous time to leave. Now I could finally realize why Goff had fled this place. All of this was a plot by the ogre who seemed to lack affection. Smart guy. He was much more intelligent than I had considered. By engaging in conversations with us constantly and relieving our weary souls through this banquet, he planned to make us stay as long as possible. As if Big Ogre also felt that it was ambiguous for us to leave, he approached and spoke with a smile. It seems that it's a bit too late now, how about eating lunch and departing tomorrow? I could give you a tour around the jungle in the morning. It was quite a shabby smile. Beginning to suspect that alcohol will also be served at lunch once more, it would also become ambiguous tomorrow as well. I had no choice but to dryly swallow my saliva back. Though it is late tonight, it is ideal for us to leave early in the morning. Don't be like that. Though we only had a single drink, but aren't we brothers? Slightly smiling, he was a bit anxious. I did not answer. As soon as morning came tomorrow, we had to escape immediately. Though they'll probably talk about how Blood Dagger and Black Spear doesn't know grace after this event, but at this rate, it felt as if they would spend time here for a whole week. In the end, after a long time of drinking, the banquet had finally come to an end. Many of the clansmen who did not have tents set up, laid stretched out on the ground, and even Regia and Heian looked a bit too drunk. It was quite a long time since we had felt such a rest. It wouldn't be bad to enjoy such a break for a day longer, I thought as I chuckled. After a bit more time, I thought that I should also get some sleep. When I was heading for an empty tent, it was then. Hey! Bloody! A voice was calling for me from somewhere. Turning my head, I saw Mev staring at me in a ridiculous state with a cup on her hand. Reddened face, spiritless eyes, and those trembling legs, anyone would be able to tell that Mev was too drunk. Aren't you being too much? It was the first time in my life that I had seen such a sharp look from Mev. Iviri time. You play with the plant. Aren't you being too much? Even though I was the first to be with you. Even though I was the first to say let's mate. It seems that she was not somewhat drunk. She was really drunk. It was then that I realized how strong the dosage of the alcohol that Big Ogre provided. Worried for Mev, I began to speak to her in an honest voice. Mev, you're drunk. Go and sleep early. I'm not a child. I'm an adult goblin. Don't treat me like a child. And I'm not drunk at all. Wondering if she knew that her current body was that of a fairy, it was amusing to see her stammer that she was an adult goblin. It was even more ridiculous seeing her trying to maintain her balance with her wings as she almost tripped from her own feet. I'm going to sleep together tonight. We'll sleep together. As I said before, it wasn't like I did not sleep with Mev. Of course there was nothing that we did, but still I couldn't help but become embarrassed from this situation, especially seeing her clinging onto me with one side of her foot and holding me tightly. This appearance of Mev was completely different from what I had seen previously, making me realize that she was greatly stressed about this. However, Mev's body was too small for me to relieve that stress for now. No, let go. Mev's feet dragged on the ground as she clung around me, refusing to give up despite trying to walk to my tent. I will never let go. I will hold you. I will embrace you. I will do it. It was truly an embarrassing situation. Looking down, I saw Mev's eyes being damp as she wiped her runny nose onto my pants, clinging onto me. Sob. I can grow bigger, sob, I'll get pregnant if I grow bigger, sob, though I wasn't sure what basis she had as evidence for being able to grow when pregnant, but she kept repeating the same words. In the end, the situation became too loud as the other clansmen began to notice the commotion. Definitely understanding how embarrassing this situation was, I quickly dragged Mev inside the tent. Though she had a bit of anticipation once we entered, but I did not feel any sort of lust from her body. Besides, her runny nose and tears caused her to look more like a cute, small child than that of what the word sexy implied. A sigh inadvertently escaped me. Finally. Not sure what she was expecting, she soon jumped onto the blanket in front and rolled around, raising her hand onto her mouth. Hee 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 hee. Her laughter was leaking out despite trying to snuffle it from doing so. As such, she was patiently waiting. It was quite a sight seeing her move her tongue as she sent a seductive look over. As if she thought that she was doing a good job. From my expression, she was even more aggressive. Unable to see her in this state any longer, I turned my head away. When I was heavily contemplating on how I should deal with her, it was then that a slow snore began to be heard from before. Fortunately, she had passed out and fallen asleep. Captain, as expected. Captain is the best. Unsure what dream she was having, she began to release strange sounds. Looking at her, I promised myself that I would never recommend the wine of the ogres to MEV again. The next morning. Despite wanting to wake up early with the thought of leaving here as quickly as possible, MEV's presence was nowhere to be seen. Even the place that she had slept in was clearly arranged by the time I had woken up. It seems that she had also remembered the scandalous attempt she had committed, which caused her to flee this tent. There was a message that was written in very squiggly lines once I woke up. Captain. Sorry. I couldn't figure out why I was laughing so much from this. Consequently, I tried to contain my laughter as I walked outside the tent, and with the Black Spear and Little Finger clans, we departed from the Big Ogre village together early in the morning. Of course, I did not forget a note of thanks. It seemed that the ogre race slept in a lot in the morning as they did not recognize us even when we had departed from the village. It was only when we had walked for a long time and the sun had risen high in the air did we hear a scream from the jungle, causing us to laugh once more. It was quite a pleasant break, and there were no memorable events afterwards. Though we had met beasts and humans along the way, they weren't problematic at all. In their situation, it was truly unlucky for them to meet us. However, that's a story unrelated to us. Since it was a difficult task moving the combined clans through an unknown area, we walked for quite a long time. Once we had passed through the jungle terrain, the scenery began to slowly change as 2 months quickly flew by. It was then that I was able to notice that we had finally arrived at the entrance of the swamp lands. TL afterward. Calvies. Looks like the ogre species is similar to me. I love sleeping in as well hee hee. PR afterward. T0 non. Poor MEV, she misses out again. Translator. Calvies editors. T0 non borderline masochist. Chapter 98. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There was somewhat a rotting smell here, but it wasn't that bad. However, what was a bit of a hassle was the slushy ground, which felt like I was walking through rice paddies. The whole green earth here looked a bit dull. There were rotten, twisted trees, worms and bugs eating through the corpses of beasts and humans, all matching the rumors that I had heard from a pub in my previous life. Though there were a few disturbing elements here, the atmosphere itself was not bad. The reason for that was the smell of danger that continued to emanate from here, which constantly stimulated my nerves. Black Spear, Gark, and Hark must have had similar thoughts as they were quite enjoying the mood, especially that of Black Spear, who looked as if he had returned to his hometown. So you've finally returned. Yes, Blood Dagger. This is the entrance of the swamp. Though there are not a lot of dangerous beasts here, but be wary of the ground. I do not recommend walking around here alone. I had also heard of this story before, of how the ground can suddenly collapse and can suck you inside the swamp. Therefore, it was recommended to travel with magicians and archers together in case you didn't know the terrain here well. I had also heard that there was a Minotaurus who bragged about his bravery and had proudly hunted lizards in the swamp before sinking to his death on the return back. I thought that it was extremely dangerous for a body of a Minotaurus to traverse this terrain. Especially if the monster had a weapon, then it would be more natural to sink. I nodded my head, but in MEV's case, she was flying in the air. The environment was surely a place that wasn't easy to live. However, just like how humans built and lived in cities that were somewhat apart from the swamp, monsters lived together with nature. It seems that it would be quite uncomfortable if I were not able to find a suitable place to stay. Well then, let's go. He nodded and soon we headed for Storm Shadow's village. Though it wouldn't be as grand of a welcoming that the ogre had shown for us, but he will definitely warm us as well. I didn't know how long it would take from the entrance of the swamp to there, but we began to slowly follow behind Black Spear. Shoo, then, we began to feel a presence from somewhere. In a split instant, all of the clansmen became quiet. But there was another problem. Girick. I'm sorry. From this sudden situation, Littlefinger wasn't able to grasp the mood and made a loud noise. Black Spear and I glared at Littlefinger, causing her to lower her head, understanding that she made a mistake. It was a great mistake for the chief of a clan to expose their position by screaming. Thanks to her, we had completely revealed our location to the enemy. I had thought that they would run away. It's a goblin. Shoo, contrary to my expectations, they began to approach us. It was probably due to the mentioning of a goblin. In the West, for instance, the moment a goblin sound was heard, the humans would immediately scatter because they were conscious of the Green Goblin clan. But this was the East, and the goblins were good prey for these guys that had even enslaved monsters here. As a result, I couldn't help but estimate that the reason they were approaching here was to aim for green skins that were eliminated from the exam. I began to slowly smile. In my perspective, I had found some useful guys. Nodding to Black Spear, he also nodded back, implying that I can do what I want. After giving me the authority, soon, the movement of the humans began to increase faster, and with one signal, the rest of the green skins all hid their bodies within the grass. The humans had arrived. Ha! As soon as they saw me, they began to dumbfoundedly stare at me. Mon. There was a great sword that was too large to be a sword on my back, the cursed voice hanging on my waist, and ancient flame on my left waist. These were all the weapons that I was currently armed with. I have never seen a demon in the vicinity. How much is a demon? I don't know such a thing. I don't think a demon has circulated around our city before. The enemy had a total of 7 people. This reaction was also anew. In the case at the West, the humans would either immediately flee or engage in battle the moment the encounter was made, but it looked like they were confident in their skills. Or that they were careless, I wasn't sure, but their reactions were certainly strange. It's the first time I see such a guy around here. He's possibly not from Storm Shadow. That troll won't come to this kind of place. Anyhow, let's prepare for battle. The objective is to definitely capture him alive. I had thought it was a goblin, but for us to have bitten an unexpected benefit. The warriors raised their swords while the magicians began to cast their spells. I revealed my teeth at the guys preparing for battle and laughed. So you're from Samora? How? There was no need to speak further. I threw a dagger immediately at the magician, and soon withdrawing my great sword, I injected mana into it. As if they could ignore the power of the dagger thrown, their voices exclaimed immediately. For the consideration of safety of the party, he began to cast a defense spell. Shield. A translucent, vague shield of magic appeared, but the instant the great sword and dagger switched locations with the activation of my unique ability, a deafening crash was heard. Boom! The mana grinds against my weapon injected with mana. The dagger that should have been deflected originally by the shield was ripped through by the great sword, piercing the chest of the magician. Fuck, what is this? Fuck. It's a named monster. A pretty flashy debut. But I did not give them the time to freely grasp the situation they were in as I threw my dagger at them once again, causing them to scatter. It was a simple action, but it shattered their formation in an instant. It was very ideal to take care of these guys one at a time. Then, I unsheathed both Cursed Voice and Ancient Flame at once. Then I charged at the priest with the lowest physical ability, causing the warriors to rush out, but I greeted them with the furious blaze from ancient flame as it spread out into the vicinity. The intense heat overwhelmed them into the veil of flames. From this, the priest looked pale as he couldn't be helped but be stupefied at what was happening from a simple hunt for slaves. I swung down my sword and cutting off the priest's arms and legs in an instant. Sheetik, the burning of flesh sizzled throughout the swamp, causing the priest to scream in pain, but I did not mind it. Since I had stopped the bleeding by incarcerating the flesh with heat, he wouldn't die. Then, I saw a warrior penetrate through the flames. Though his whole body was in flames, he still approached me despite his priest already being incapable of battle. Shit. Damn demon bastard. I slightly retreated my body and swung the cursed voice at him. Though the blade did not reach him, the distance was enough to be under my area. The guy returned me a strange look at the sword swinging through the air. Stupid guy. I switched the location of cursed voice with my great sword too large to be a sword and cut off his shoulder. Though I could have chopped his head off, but I had decided to take him in alive. Blood bloomed like a fountain from him as he screamed pleasantly to my ear. Though the explanation was somewhat long, but in that short instant, 3 people were incapacitated in an instant. At this time, realizing the obvious patterns of my attacks, they began to scatter all around. Run away. I haven't seen such a monster before. Fuck. Looking back, the clansmen finally flooded out as Black Spear's weapon ripped through the air. The air was torn through as it began to bend towards a strange direction. In a split instant, 2 people were skewered from that black spear as it continued spiral into a rotten tree with immense force before stopping. The rest of the guys also met the same fate. One of them had their legs and arms completely cut off as Gark was running over with him caught in the air. On the other hand, MEV had penetrated the armor of the last guy with her arrows and spirits. It was only a moment before they became incapable of fighting. Not bad. Their standards were not that low, but this overwhelmingly one-sided battle showed that the growth of our training was not bad. The only person that had died was the magician at the start, but the rest were somewhat alive. Though there were many who had lost consciousness, but the one that had its shoulder cut off was looking at me heatedly. Fu, CK, what is this? They had approached here after hearing the sound of a goblin, but had instead encountered a demon, so it was understandable why they were so dumbfounded by what had just transpired, but it's their problem. It's not something that we had to care about. It won't be bad as a gift. After Black Spear nodded in agreement that they had obtained a nice present, we arrived at the Storm Shadow village, which was much different in atmosphere from that of the ogres. In the case of the ogres' village, it was full of vitality, but the village here was very sullen. Knowing that we were coming, the entrance of the village opened, but no one came out to meet us. Just like the Black Spear clan, there were human skulls decorated here and there as possessions fitting to the troll species began to come into sight. Though the majority of them were related to bones, but that alone was enough for us to feel that we had come to a completely different place. Despite entering the village, there was still no one to greet us, so it was quite a bit surprising. Looking over at Black Spear with suspicion, he replied with a familiar expression. It's normally like this here. I see. Soon, arriving at the largest tent in the village, Storm Shadow revealed himself from it. It's been a while. Black Spear, and Blood Dagger. It was quite a sullen voice like before. He looked exactly the same as before with quite an impressive molar, the gloomy troll, Storm Shadow. TL afterward. Calvies. Dang, I like how the MC fights now. Never thought that he would adapt a situation like that, wondering what MC can do to further advance his versatility on his unique ability. PR afterward. T0 non. Ah, such useful UA translator. Calvi's editors. T0 non borderline masochist. Chapter 99. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Strength, wisdom and honor, strength, wisdom and honor. Storm Shadow looked over in a joyful manner. As if he was truly delighted, the corners of his lips raised slightly. The first time Goff and I had met him, I recognized that he didn't respond well with any sort of expression. He definitely is one of those kinds of green skin who didn't express his emotions so well. But hearing his slightly high-toned voice, there was no mistake that he was delighted by our arrival. "What business do you have in the East, Blood Dagger and Black Spear?" Though he asked, it felt like he already was aware of everything. Considering such a thing at this time, I felt that it would be prudent to satisfy him with what he wanted. "I wish to settle in the East." "That is welcoming news, Blood Dagger. How about it? Did you obtain what you wanted through Green Goblin?" "Sufficiently, many green skins are reluctant to come towards the East. But, this place is also quite a nice location to live in." "Is that so?" Though those words felt a bit untrustworthy, I decided to respond to it. Actually, I had no thought of living here for all of my lifetime, but noticing his expression, I felt that it was best not to add anything unnecessary. The guy who continued to talk then shifted his gaze over to the 6 captured humans. Feeling the gaze of Storm Shadow, I spoke up. "It's a gift. We caught these humans along the way here. Please take these 3 people, we will take the other 3. "Very good. Very good." He was extremely delighted as the humans who had now regained consciousness were completely silent. It was certain that they would be flabbergasted at being dragged to the village of Storm Shadow after leaving for a simple goblin hunt. Their lips and body were trembling unconditionally, but of course, there was no compassion for them. They were just trophies at best after all. Anyhow, it is proper to welcome the guests. After leaving the West, the second banquet had begun. After receiving the welcome of the Big Ogre clan, I had some expectations in anticipation of this banquet, but the party of the Storm Shadow clan was extremely boring. Everyone was engaged in low whispers while feasting on the food displayed, but not much conversations arose otherwise. Gark and Hark were silently talking with one another, and the lively personality which is MEV was wiping away the cold sweat. Storm Shadow nodded and began to speak some ordinary stories. Mentally, I had wished for this banquet to end as quickly as possible, and fortunately, it ended much quicker than that of the ogres. Then I entered my tent. We had decided to reside in the small sector of the village provided by Storm Shadow, so we set up our flags and quickly built up our tents. Once we completed the tents, contrary to the expectation of Heian, I was accompanied by Regia as she brought forth the 3 captured humans. Throwing them roughly on the ground in front of me so I could now obtain some information. "Samora," the moment I spoke, they immediately replied. "Ho, how do you know our language? You do not need to be concerned with that." I beckoned to Regia, the guys slowly began to approach. In that somewhat short time, if there was anything that I had realized, it was that Regia's torture was quite effective. No, rather than effective, she looked like a professional at it. Though I wasn't sure exactly what position they were in at Samora, but knowing that even such trivial information could become a great weapon, I was determined to extract every single piece of detail. "Can we start?" I nodded from Regia's voice. The reason why she was able to deal with such matters effectively was that she did not become agitated. In the case of Hark, Gark, and Heian, they would quickly kill the humans, but she knew how to coldly execute her role. It was simple at first, at the start, she would instill a bit hesitant. Then, not long after, screams would burst out. On the remaining arm of one of them, she would stab a nail-like dagger, causing him to scream horrifyingly. "Ah! Ah!" From that noise, I frowned, and immediately Regia put a cloth in his mouth and began to continue her work. After a bit more time, he was shedding tears. It was then that he finally realized that he had made a mistake. I had wasted my time. These guys had no sense of belonging or justice. Rather, they were just guys that moved for their own benefits. Even if I hadn't tortured them, it was certain they would have replied to me. I raised my hand and soon Regia took out the cloth from his mouth and allowed us to start our conversation. Name: Li Wanyong. Age: 30.8. I am 30.8 years old. Do you belong to a guild or a clan? Yes. BL, Blackthorn Guild. How lucky. Though I had thought that I would be able to capture one since the guild was quite large, but I hadn't imagined that I would capture a guy from the Blackthorn Guild the moment I arrived within the swamps. What good luck. Yes. I was looking for you. Once I finished, the face of the guy brightened as he began to think that there might be a way to secure his life. From this moment forth, I will not weigh everything that you say. About the city, the state of affairs in the East, and lastly, news regarding the slaves, I want you to speak about everything. Literally. Yes. The reason why I told him I wouldn't mind what he said was because I didn't want him to be reluctant on speaking about the slaves to me. Though I knew the truth that orcs and goblins were enslaved by Samora City, but it would be difficult to evaluate the current situation if he were to hide some details due to fear. Of course, there was a strange curiosity in his face of how I knew about slaves. If he was as quick-witted as Heian, he would soon realize that I was originally human. But he did not inquire further as he knew that he should not cross past the permitted line. Ugh, where to start? Talk comfortably. It's all right to start with you and go forth from there. Since the night was long, there was lots of time. I looked over Regia, and she quickly moved over to my side. I was summoned here about 12 years ago, or, originally. I was summoned in the West. It has been 4 years since I moved into Samora. I see. As soon as I moved here, I was accepted into the Blackthorn Guild officially, but it was then, SL slave hunt, it was not my intention. I had no choice. He was trembling, but I roughly knew this would happen. Since our races were different, he wouldn't have a sliver of remorse in conscience, but he was being wary of my presence as much as possible. It was the fact that I was a monster why he was like that, so I had no choice but to speak out. I think I told you not to speak of any useless facts. Tell the truth as it is. This is the last warning. Yes. Understanding what I wanted, he began to talk without hesitation. From what he reported, the majority of the humans that resided in Samora were official guild members, mostly did business to those who came from outside. It wasn't a legitimate business, as the majority that did come came to buy slaves illegally, or to use of the black market, or even request assassinations. There was even a show made that showed monsters killing humans for visitors to watch. The fact that there was even prostitution for monsters, I couldn't help but notice how rotten Samora actually was. But what's more serious is that, there is a limited number of people that can work. Though on the outside, it looks like a city that is more developed for the nightlife, but most transactions and business happen underground. I'm still a low rank, so I don't know in detail. In other words, on the outside it was a nightlife and slave city. Where and how do you obtain your slaves? In the case of monsters, we target goblins and orcs who have strayed away from the groups. For humans, we capture civilians without any combat ability or those from small clans. Usually, the people of the cities that have lost in war against us would all be captured and made into slaves. In truth, the majority of human slaves are civilians, and there are a few that are murderers as well. The more I heard, the more flabbergasted I was. It was because the parts one knew of was very minimal compared to what the internal state of the city actually was. Not only that, like I had suspected, all of the authorities of the cities in the east all had some sort of relations with the Blackthorn Guild and its guild master, Yun Young-soo, and he even mentioned how there were some people that came from the desert cities of the south to meet him. In other words, Samora was a trash can for people to come and expose all of their desires. For those that tried to be clean, it was a much-needed trash can. Grasping the situation of Samora a bit, I asked another question. Do you know anything about Spider and Hound clan? After pondering a bit, he replied not long after. If you're inquiring about the murderer clans, that aspect, I know nothing. Though guild members suspected about that relationship, but it's just a minor speculation. Is there anyone here that knows more than you? There is none here. I then glanced over and saw the two who were trembling. As expected, the guy in front of me had the highest position amongst them. The ones in the back seemed like they wanted to show some usefulness like Li Wanyong, but realizing that it wasn't the atmosphere to speak out, they remained silent. I'm also curious if the executives go out from time to time. Yes. Of course. The guild executives move directly when they travel to deliver slaves towards the larger cities. TL afterward. Calvies. Sounds like the typical Las Vegas here, but with more horrible conditions and circumstances. PR afterward. T0 non. Well. Vote for us in NU. Almost there, the big 100 chapters. A big thank you to all the readers of GS, much love to y'all. Translator. Calvies editors. T0 non. Chapter 100. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The city of Samora was quite large in size, but the forces of the Blackthorn Guild wasn't as much. As such, it was obvious that Samora would try and curry favors of the larger cities and look favorable towards the larger guilds. It was an act necessary in order to preserve accidents from happening, so it showed the degree of importance that the guild executives viewed this business so much so that they would travel themselves. I want to know if you know the route and time. He began to ponder once I probed, and soon realized that this one reply could determine his life and death. I know it roughly, but to be certain, it means that he does now. It was then that one of the guys in the back spoke out. L.C. I've heard that there is a large transaction of slaves transferring, which is going to occur next week at the metropolis of Haydam. TL. Metropolis equals major city. From his words, Li Wanyong turned back and began to glare at his party member. It was probably a glare implying why he would spout out so much crucial information at the blink of an eye, though he was also revealing a lot as well. This guy knows that I had no reason of keeping all three guys here. As a result, the last one who did not speak of any valuable information was fidgeting anxiously, making it a truly interesting scene. After some time had passed, they began to compete against one another in spitting out information as if it was a great achievement. Not sure what the reason was, but Li Wanyong was greatly passive in his approach. However, I roughly knew what he was thinking as I couldn't help but smile. I remember too. I have heard that there will definitely be one next week. Definitely. It's not regular, but there is a large transaction roughly about once a month. There is an average of about 30 members including executives that depart together, and about an average of 50 slaves as well. Really impressive guys. Even though I did not ask Willy.nilly, they told me every single information I needed. Actually, there was too much information being spouted out all at once that I needed some time to organize it, so I called out to Regia. Alron, yes. I understand. I tried to attach the other guys to Heian who could also speak the human language. Soon, Regia returned with Heian as she glared down at the men. Then, after greeting me with a bow, she spoke. Did you call? I'll give you two guys. There was no need for any more words. Understanding, she nodded her head with a smile. The moment I was about to give a few of them over to Heian, they seemingly wanted to attach themselves to her personally, but I personally would recommend them to rather stay away from her. Since those that do go to the side of Heian will spend an extremely painful time. It does not matter if you kill them if you deem them useless. Yes. After brightly smiling, except for Li Wanyong, she took the other two guys and brought them outside the camp. Unable to comprehend the monster language that we conversed in, the two guys went outside with the plant joyfully. Though Li Wanyong was looking over at them with envy, but in my honest opinion, I don't expect neither of them to be able to survive the night. Anyhow, I continued to engage in a conversation with him. Size of the forces and the conditions of the slaves. The number of slaves. The routes they used. Unlike the two previous ones, he had suddenly become passive in providing information, but since Heian will be working hard, so it wouldn't matter. However, since the conversation was progressing so slowly, I became frustrated. In the end, I looked at him and spoke. You can speak a little more comfortably. Even if we were to capture the executive. I will not kill you, yes, yes. What a smart guy. Of course he knew that if a human who knew more information than him was captured, then he realized that he would have no further use anymore. Though his level was not something that could be classified as superior, but he was pretty strong himself. In a normal guild, elites would have a pretty high status and position, which meant that they had a higher level of knowledge and information as well. He probably knew much more than the other two that had left here. As if he realized that his thoughts were noticed, his face began to pale before speaking out. Will you spare me? Of course. Of course it was a lie. Green skins do not lie. If you prove that you have more use than the other two who've just left, you will be able to keep your life. There was no reason for me to spare his life from my position. But wanting to believe in me, he began to speak slowly once more. With his thoughts already been compromised, he probably knew that there were no other alternatives. Soon, after some time had passed, I sent him back and began to organize the information together with the other executives. The date was 4 days later, and even the time and location was extremely detailed and precise. Though Heian had brought some information, but the quality of the information was entirely different from that guy in comparison to the other two. The roads that the humans take were definitely different from those of the monsters. The humans knew about that fact, and the monsters knew as well. As a result, the humans had thoroughly hidden the routes they used, whether it was through magic or keeping troops on standby. All of this was due to the fact that humans roughly estimated that monsters would determine humans that passed by as a hunting ground for them. As a result, the route that we discovered was in the conflict area. In other words, lakes and beasts, or even places of fruits and trees were conflict areas. There was one road that the green skins knew from Samora to Haddam. Therefore, this road had already lost its function as a route, since this was the way that the Storm Shadow clan and the other green skins of the east used. On the other hand, what Li Wanyong informed me of was a road that was not yet known. Though it was a bit of a roundabout way, it was certainly a safe route protected by magic that connected from Samora to Haddam. With this much, even Storm Shadow would not know of this. Once Hakugen scoured the road carefully, he spoke, which I replied to. Since this was hidden for a long time, there's a high possibility that this isn't used as a normal road. If the green skins or Storm Shadow in the vicinity knew that Greek skin slaves were being transported, they would not have left them alone, so I thought it was the main reason why they had such high security in secretly using this route. From what Hakugen had spoken of, even I thought that Storm Shadow would be unaware of this. There was a large boulder that led into a tunnel. Even the tunnel was furthest away from the territory of Storm Shadow, with countless illusions and traps installed in here. Above all, since security was most prioritized, there was also troops that guarded this road. If it weren't for Li Wanyong, I thought that we wouldn't have been able to discover this road even after Samora were to be destroyed. As a result, I became thankful to him. Thus, we began to plan. Firstly, entering the tunnel was out from the get-go. Though it wouldn't matter if there were only Samora, but to face guild members of Haddam was a very burdensome matter. Above all, we had no magician or shaman that could deactivate all of the magic illusions and traps that were within the tunnel. Although we have a very high-level magician in Heian, but her talents are focused purely on the plant side due to her race. Other than destroying it by sheer force, it would be difficult to destroy the illusion magic. It was likewise with Hakugen, who had shifted his focus on recovery shamanism, so we had no way of deactivating high-level magic. Therefore, the best time to approach them was before they enter the tunnel. The best part was that there were a lot of places for a possible ambush like the tunnel. Certainly, this won't be bad at all. If you exclude the fact that it's a tunnel and not a cave, it's greatly similar to the place I used before. Yeah. Sounds good. MEV nodded from the fact that the tunnel was exceptionally similar to the cave Hakugen used for ambush before if you exclude the differences in forces. So it's a battle. The rest of the guys began to smile, with Gark and Hark being the most excited. Therefore, the meeting concluded quicker than I had thought. Anyhow, the job should be quite simple. There should be only about 30 people of forces moving at best. Unlike before, we didn't lack in numbers for once, and it was a battle that Black Spear didn't necessarily had to participate. Not to mention, Black Spear was already busy due to the Little Finger clan, so I had decided not to bother him this round. Whenever the executives walked in and were contemplating in my tent, the other clan members would pretend that they weren't interested in what was going on, but would always eavesdrop from outside. To be able to relay them the message that they so wanted in a long time, I left the tent first and informed them. It's a battle. Girik. Girik. Kariak. In a split second, the village became loud as even the young green skins that were born and growing were also screaming together. I wasn't sure if they were screaming because the adult goblins were or because they knew that a real battle was going to occur, but the young green skins certainly looked pleased. It seems that they couldn't hide their innate nature. For Blood Dagger. Though it has not been 1 year, the children began to run around smiling. Seeing that they were growing well, it brought a smile to my face. Young goblins would be able to enter battles after 3 years, and 7 years after they were officially recognized as adults. Of course I wasn't going to send them to the battle lines right away. Then I saw Nicole running around, causing me to head over and stroke her head. For Blood Dagger. A cute voice rang in my ears. I smiled at Nicole once more as I saw her preparing the weapons with the other guys. The quick-witted ones had already been preparing their weapons and bags in advance, and the goblins and orc administered by Hakugen were preparing all the necessary provisions and supplies. Food and drinking water were basic necessities, and there were also supplies prepared in case of unexpected variables. Thus, we were able to soon depart from Storm Shadow's village. TL afterward. Calvies. Nico, Nicole, finally nice to have such a large family of young green skins now, waiting for MEV's child now. Also, keep Li Wangyong. It's nice to have a human once in a while. PR afterward. T0 Non. First 100 chapters of GS, we've done it. We made it. Congrats high point fives all around. Translator. Calvi's editors. T0 Non.